Not sure who to start at wide receiver in week one for fantasy football? How about the guys who have massive upside, great matchups, and could help win your week single handedly? We call those guys our boom picks. We're going to give you our favorites at wide receiver. And while you're setting those lineups, don't forget to set your underdog line too for those pick'ems. NFL week one picks are live. And right now, if you sign up for the very first time on Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use promo code ENDGAME because that gets you the new customer special for week one, Travis Kelce, going higher than half a yard. That's right. He gets 1 yard in week one. You win that pick, and you still have a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. Check out Underdog Fantasy and use promo code ENDGAME. Chris, let's start it off.
Well, let's start with a guy I've talked up all offseason. Both of us really have talked up all offseason that we think is going to be a huge bounce back candidate. It's going to surprise a lot of people, and that is Chris Godwin going against, I guess, my Washington Commanders this week. And I say it like that because their defense is bad, and that's being nice. Probably a bottom 5 defense here. I mean, unless Dan Quinn works miracles, this is going to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Their highest graded returning coverage player from last year is Jartavius Martin, who graded at a whopping 58.3. That is out of 100, by the way. That is barely above like the Mendoza line for you baseball folks out there, which probably not a lot of you, well, probably some of you. But the point is, they don't have anybody good in this secondary. The one guy who probably could have been their best slot corner, Kendall Fuller, he's gone. So they don't have anybody here who's going to be able to match up with Chris Godwin out of the slot. And that's why we've been so high on Chris Godwin this year, because we've been talking about it. New OC Liam Cohen, head coach Todd Bowles, saying, hey, we got to get Chris Godwin back into the slot. What did we see in the preseason? This guy ran over 60% of his snaps out of the slot. He's going to dominate this hapless Commanders defense from the slot. And look, maybe he even scores a touchdown this week. This is a guy, it's kind of what's been lacking for him the last couple of years. But go back a few years ago, this guy was one of the best wide receivers. He finished as a wide receiver 2 1 year before he got hurt at the very end of the season, averaging 19 points per game. I think he can get back to that this year, and I think it starts this week in this matchup against this terrible Commanders defense. So, I mean, sure, you're definitely starting Mike Evans, but you should also definitely be starting Chris Godwin if you got him in this matchup.
Well, I'm going to take the flip side of that exact same matchup. Let's go for the top receiver in Washington, Terry McLaurin. Now, some people might not be sure what to expect from this Washington offense. Obviously, no coaching staff, new OC, and a lot has been shaken up here, of course. A rookie quarterback making his first start. So can you trust Terry right away? You can and you should. So first of all, let's talk matchup. It's Tampa Bay. Last year against wide receivers, they give up the 4th most fantasy points. They had some games where it was just like a sieve back there in the secondary. And somehow they really didn't do a whole lot to improve that secondary. Their best cover corner is still Jamel Dean, who's sometimes good and sometimes not, and sometimes injured. All they did was take a 3rd round pick. They took one cornerback out of Georgia. That's it. They addressed a lot of other needs. Secondary is just not that good. Now, as far as Washington and this offense, it's become pretty obvious that Terry McLaurin is going to be a target hog. He might even be among the NFL leaders in target share for his team. Because who else are they going to throw to, honestly? Jahan Dotson now been shipped off. You got Luke McCaffrey, maybe, as a rookie, being the wide receiver 2, or De'Ami Brown, who honestly, I forgot was still on the team before I realized he might be the wide receiver 2 there. Noah Brown, who just came over because he was let go by Houston. Look, when Jaden Daniels goes back to pass, who do you think he's going to look to? One of those guys or Terry McLaurin? It's going to be a lot of Scary Terry, and that's what I'm going to look for, that target volume. Terry McLaurin, a very talented receiver, no issues there. Bad defense and ton of targets. That's a recipe for a huge week. Now we got a couple of other veterans who might have a huge week, including somebody who just needs to stay healthy to maybe have a big season.
Yeah, I don't know how good I feel about Cooper Kupp having a big season, but look, if you were buying into this Cooper Kupp steam here where he started going 2nd round in fantasy drafts, I think you're going to get rewarded at least this week in week 1 because the Rams get the Detroit Lions this week. You look at this Lions secondary, last year was definitely one of the weaknesses for this team that probably held them back. Now, they did address it this offseason. They brought in some guys I like. I think this secondary will be better this year, but I have my doubts if it's going to be better in week 1, because if preseason was any indication, they are not there yet. This secondary still seemed like a huge liability in the preseason. It's probably going to take a while for the secondary to gel and really, hit their full stride. So I think we can take advantage of it still here in week 1 with Cooper Kupp. Remember, they're going to be in Detroit here, so you're in the Dome. Perfect weather. We know that Lions offense at home puts up points, scores tons of points, which means the Rams are going to have to keep pace and also put up points and score a ton of points. So certainly Puka Nacua, I think, is going to have a huge game this week. But Cooper Kupp, he's healthy. He's in a great matchup. He's still Stafford's number 2 guy, no doubt about it. So I think in this matchup with this Lions secondary that is still trying to figure things out, still trying to hit their stride, this is the time to fully go in 100% all in on Cooper Kupp. I think he has a big week 1 and rewards everybody who took him maybe a little bit too early in their drafts. But hey, if it works out in week 1, at least you got that. So Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, is a must start in every lineup this week.
Well, my next pick is a guy who definitely just needs to stay healthy to go off. This might seem very obvious and also very questionable at the same time. Deebo Samuel, because, well, first of all, he's playing the Jets, and we know the Jets weren't just one of the best defenses in the league last year. They were by far the toughest against wide receivers. In fact, they only give up 5 touchdowns to wide receivers all season long, naturally because they have one of the top shutdown corners in the game with Sauce Gardner. Yeah, that could worry you, but here's the thing I like about Deebo. He's not your typical wide receiver. He's not just going to go toe-to-toe with Sauce Gardner running down the field. We know how they use him, and I don't just mean in the backfield. I mean at the line of scrimmage, those screens, those short passes, those slants. That's what makes Deebo, to some extent, matchup proof. They're going to need him a lot, especially with Ayuk's situation, and I really think they're going to utilize him to the fullest. So I like Deebo in this matchup. I have zero concern about him in terms of the floor. He's definitely going to be involved. And of course, he just needs the ball in his hands. It could definitely go off. And this game is in San Francisco, not a road game for them. 49ers usually put up points, so I'm all in on Deebo, even if the matchup doesn't seem like it should offer that. All right, let's look for another high upside wide receiver.
Yeah, when you think of a boom wide receiver, one of the first names that probably comes to mind is Christian Watson. I mean, this guy is kind of like the boom bust wide receiver here, but I love him this week in this matchup against the Eagles. You look at that Eagles defense last year, started off well, but then the second half of the season just fell off a cliff, and they did not get any better this year. In fact, you could argue they've gotten worse because their safety, James Bradbury, just suffered a leg injury. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. Their other really only good corner, Darius Slay, was terrible down the stretch last year. He's 33 years old. There's a good chance Darius Slay is, dare I say, dust. They do have some young guys with potential, but that's the thing. They're young guys with potential. Are we really going to bet week 1 these guys are going to hit their potential? I'm not. I think Christian Watson can take advantage of this secondary, especially without safety Bradbury. He can hit some huge plays in this game. That's what you're looking for in a boom week, right? You're looking for a guy that can catch a 30, 40, 50-yard touchdown. Not to mention Christian Watson, despite only playing, 11 games last year, I think, was one of the leaders on this team in red zone targets. They look for him when they get near the goal line. So he's got tremendous touchdown upside anytime he's healthy. And oh, guess what? He's actually healthy right now. Will it last? I don't know. But for right now, he's healthy. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of this matchup. And also take advantage of his line on Underdog, because right now on Underdog, his line is 38.5 receiving yards. He can do that on one play against this defense. So I'm smashing the higher on that 38.5 receiving yards. You pair that with that Travis Kelce new customer special, only needs a yard, and you win that pick. Right away, you can triple your entry. And if you sign up using promo code ENDGAME, not only are you going to get that Kelce special, you're also going to get a deposit match, 50% up to $1,000. Take the money from that deposit match, put it on Christian Watson higher than 38.5 yards, put it on the Travis Kelce new customer special, and instantly triple your entry.
And I'll go with another veteran receiver who looks like he's got a terrible matchup, but really doesn't. Let's look at that banged up secondary in Dallas and see that Amari Cooper could just pick up where he left off at the end of last year. Now, I know, Joe Flacco's not there anymore to save us all. Okay, fine. I guess he can still catch passes from Deshaun Watson, who is still supposed to be a franchise quarterback. We'll see. But if you remember, Amari Cooper was actually really good with Deshaun Watson those first few weeks of last season when that connection was there. Amari Cooper will be heavily involved here because I'm still not buying into Jerry Jeudy as a reliable receiver. He's new to the team. He's been missing some time in the preseason. Their other options there are still a work in progress. Amari Cooper is the guy in that passing offense, and that Dallas defense, yeah, I know they were top 5 against the wide receiver last year, but they are missing their top corner from a year ago. Deron Bland is hurt, and Trevon Diggs, well, their other top corner, is also recovering from a serious injury. That secondary is not going to be the same, and their coach, Dan Quinn, that got a head coach job because he had such a good defense in Dallas last year, he's not in Dallas anymore. So I'm just saying it's not going to be quite the same. Amari Cooper could easily take advantage of his old team and have another huge game. Everything you need to know in order to dominate in week 1 for fantasy, it's all right here. Start sit at every position, booms at receiver and running back. Check it out if you haven't already.